She marched up, screaming it was her beach, clipboard flapping like a royal decree, but guess what? Every single grain of sand she stood on already belonged to me. HOA Karen told me to leave her beach lot, but I own the shoreline now. Part 1, the chair, the clipboard, and the calm before the storm. I wasn't supposed to cry that morning, but grief has a way of sneaking up on you, even in paradise. The beach was empty, just the waves, and me. Carrying a folding chair and a heart still too heavy. I wasn't there to make a statement. I just wanted to sit, to breathe, to feel close to my husband again, even if only for a moment. We'd stood on that very shoreline once, barefoot, laughing, dreaming about the kind of future that now only lived in memory. But then, she showed up. Sun hat tilted like a crown, clipboard swinging like a sword, and a voice that sliced through the air. "You can't be here. This is private HOA beach, members only." She didn't ask my name, didn't bother with kindness, just barked orders, like I was trespassing on sacred land. I turned slowly, kept my eyes on the waves, the very view my husband loved most, and calmly said, "I don't think that's correct." She scoffed, arms crossed. "Oh, you don't think? I'm on the HOA board, sweetie. I know who owns what. And you're not on the list." I didn't flinch, because deep down, I knew something she didn't. I owned it. Not just the sand, but the silence. Not just the deed, but the history. But I didn't tell her that yet. Instead, I stood up, dusted the sand from my legs, and pulled the folded paper from my bag, worn at the edges from the number of times I'd checked it. The deed. I held it out. She didn't even look. She laughed, loud and smug. "People try this trick every summer. Fake papers, made-up stories. I'm calling security." And just like that, the whispers began. People on towels behind umbrellas, staring, judging, deciding I was in the wrong without knowing a thing. I took a breath, then calmly folded the deed, packed my chair, and smiled, not kindly, but clearly. "I'll leave, but not because you told me to." She looked victorious, hands on her hips, like she'd won a battle. But little did she know, she was standing on land I legally owned. Every grain of that golden sand she guarded so fiercely belonged to me. And next time, I wouldn't walk away. Part 2, the memory. The paper, trail, and the truth she never saw coming. I didn't cry in the car, not because I wasn't hurt, but because I was tired of shrinking myself just to avoid a scene. As I drove home, the deed still rested on my lap. A quiet reminder that what just happened wasn't just rude, it was wrong. I could have turned around. I could have walked straight back onto that sand and dropped the hammer. Showed her the stamped seal, the boundary map, the truth. But I didn't. Not yet. Because that strip of shoreline, it wasn't just property to me, it was memory. My husband and I had spent years trying to find peace near that water. But because our home sat just outside the HOA line, we were always told, "You don't belong." We had laughed it off back then. "It's just sand," he'd said, grinning. "We'll find our own." But it wasn't just sand. It was dignity, the right to sit, to grieve, to exist, without being shamed for it. And now I owned it. The irony should have felt sweet, but instead, it ached, because he wasn't here to see it. He wasn't here to watch that woman, clipboard and all, choke on the truth. I could almost hear his voice, gentle and teasing. "You always get the last word, Liv." He used to say that when I argued with the GPS. Karen hadn't recognized me, of course. Last time she saw me, my hair was longer, my eyes brighter, my laugh still existed. Grief had changed my face. There were shadows now, weight in my silence. But I didn't live to please people anymore. Least of all, someone who thought laminated bylaws gave her power over strangers. That night, I pulled the folder out again, opened it slowly, one page at a time. The deed, the tax receipts, the county registration, the map, with bold lines outlining exactly what I owned. Not part of the HOA, never was, never will be. Let her scream, let her threaten fines. Next time, I won't walk away quietly. Next time, she'll learn the hard way, that I don't borrow space anymore. I claim it, and this time, I'm staying. Part 3. The loophole, the lost listing, and the deal she never saw coming. The first time I saw the listing, it felt like a ghost whispering, buried deep in a dusty corner of the county's land registry. No headline, no flashy photos, just a line of coordinates, trailing along the shoreline like a secret waiting to be found. I stared at it for hours. Not because I was ready to buy, I wasn't. Not emotionally, not financially, not after everything I'd lost. But something about it. It pulled at me. The parcel was registered under Lorraine Hayes, an old woman who years ago had sold off inland homes, but never gave up the beach lot. She'd kept it, quietly, legally, intentionally. The HOA never noticed, or maybe they did, but assumed she was too old to enforce her claim. When Lorraine passed, her granddaughter, a woman named Beth, inherited the land, and in her first message back to me, she wrote, "Honestly, I don't live in state. Taxes are annoying. I just want it gone." I blinked, then smiled, because the beach Karen thought she ruled with a clipboard and a glare was about to become mine. I made an offer, fair but quiet, didn't want to raise flags. Beth accepted in 3 days, clean, simple, final. The moment the deed hit my inbox, I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just drove. Out to the sand. Out to his beach. No signs. No gates. Just that familiar breeze brushing against my skin, the same one that once carried my husband's laughter. And for the first time in years, I stood on that shoreline, barefoot, free, not as a guest, but as the owner. He would have said something like, "The ocean doesn't care who owns it, Liv, but it's still nice to win once in a while." I could almost hear him, and in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just a purchase. It was a quiet revolution, woven in paperwork, fueled by memory, and finished with one signature. On land, Karen never knew had slipped through her fingers. Part 4. The sign, the shell camera, and the first strike. A week later, I found it flapping in the wind like a threat that had lost its bite. A laminated notice, taped to a rotting fence post at the edge of my lot. HOA Policy 12. B. No unauthorized persons may access the private shoreline without current credentials. My name wasn't on it, but we both knew who it was meant for. I didn't tear it down. Not yet. I just took a picture, folded it into my bag, and smiled. Let her believe the illusion. Let her think the rules still bent in her favor, because I was done shouting. I wanted her to hang herself, one smug notice at a time. That evening, I brought something new with me, a wooden post, freshly painted, and a sign I'd written by hand. No legalese, no theatrics. Private property, not HOA land. No access without permission. But that wasn't all. Tucked beneath the driftwood, a shell-shaped trail cam. Small, weatherproof, motion-activated. Because I'd learned something over the years, words don't protect you. Proof does. The next few days were quiet. A few dog walkers passed. A couple of teens kicked a soccer ball too close to the dunes, only to be shooed off by a woman with a sun hat and judgmental eyes. Karen. Always Karen. She didn't speak at first, just glared, like she could burn me off the sand with nothing but her stare. But on day 5, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She stormed up, terrier in tow, clipboard in hand, voice sharp as broken seashells. "You again?" I thought we talked about this. I didn't flinch, didn't even stand, just looked up and said, "This isn't HOA property." Flat, simple, final. She blinked, surprised, just for a second, then smiled. That tight, brittle smile of someone about to lose control. "We'll see about that. I'm checking with the board." I let her walk away. Let her stew. Let her waste time flipping through bylaws that had nothing to do with me. Because the truth? It was already written. In county records. In plat maps. In ink she couldn't erase. And now, it was captured on camera, too. Part 5. The ripped sign. The folder named proof. And the shift that night. I reviewed the footage. Karen had returned to the lot while I was out. Same hat, same glare, same petty vengeance. She stood right in front of my sign, read it, scoffed, then yanked the post from the ground like it had personally offended her. She tossed it into the dune grass with a flick of her wrist and muttered under her breath, "This'll teach her." Her voice was clear on the mic, too clear. I paused the video, sat in the silence, not angry, not scared, just done. This wasn't misunderstanding anymore. This was deliberate, trespassing, vandalism, harassment, and now, documented. I created a folder that night, labeled it simply, Proof. Inside, the deed, the parcel map, county land records, photos of her notices, screenshots from the camera, clips, full clips, with her voice, her face, her actions. I didn't want war. But I wasn't afraid of one either. Later I sat on the porch, crickets humming around me like a soft warning. In my hands, an old photo. My husband holding a seashell to his ear, grinning like it told him secrets. He used to say the ocean remembered things, that it carried stories back and forth with the tide. Maybe he was right. Maybe it remembered every time we'd been turned away, every look, every rule, every door closed just because we didn't belong. But now, the tide had changed. And this time, I was the one who stayed. And she was the one who crossed the line. Part 6. The complaint, the clerk, and the power of prepared silence. The next morning. I didn't bring a journal, or coffee, or my folding chair. I brought a black folder, and a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. The county records building smelled like old paper, and powdered lemon air freshener trying too hard. The front desk clerk looked up with soft eyes. "How can I help you?" I placed the folder down, steady and intentional. "I'd like to file a complaint for trespassing and destruction of private property. I have evidence, and I'd like the HOA formally notified." She blinked once, then gave a slow, impressed nod. "Do you have ownership documentation?" I opened the folder, and for the first time, I enjoyed the way her eyes widened as she scanned through. The deed with the county seal, the plat map, clearly excluding me from HOA jurisdiction, screenshots from the trail cam, Karen, mid-sneer, mid-vandalism, and the cease and desist I'd received from their board, full of hollow threats. We moved into a small meeting room. She reviewed every page like she was flipping through a crime novel. Then she looked up and smiled. "You came prepared. Most people don't." I gave a tired smile back. "I've learned not to count on anyone else to defend what I own." She nodded. We can flag your parcel in our system, so any future HOA claims show as disputed. And if they escalate again, you've got a solid case. As I walked back to my car, something shifted. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was power, real power. Not the fake kind that hides behind clipboards and made-up rules. This power came from facts, from paper, from truth. Karen wouldn't stop, not on her own, but she just underestimated the quietest woman on the block. And that would be her biggest mistake yet. Part 7. The cease and desist, the lawyer's name, and one perfect sentence 3 days later. An envelope showed up in my mailbox. Plain, unmarked, laminated edge. Inside, a letter addressed to concerned resident. No name, no legal header, just arrogance. Cease and desist, it said, claiming I was unlawfully using HOA-managed land, citing vague policies with even vaguer authority. I read it once, then again, and I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that makes you feel better, the kind that confirms what you already knew. Karen was scared. The HOA wasn't behind this. She was all writing threats dressed up as policy, hoping I'd fold. But I didn't fold. I forwarded the entire message to my lawyer, attached the scanned deed, the plat map, and the photos of Karen ripping my sign from the ground. Then I drafted a reply. No emotion, no long explanation, just one single line at the end. All future communication should be directed to my legal representation. I hit send, and that was it. No more threats, no more notes. The board went silent. But Karen wasn't done. 2 days later, I saw her again, standing just outside my lot, phone raised, muttering into the mic like a war reporter on the front line. She didn't speak to me, didn't wave, didn't dare cross the line. Because now, there were new signs, tall, sturdy, impossible to miss. Private property, monitored and recorded, not HOA land. And just beneath them, cameras, watching, waiting, not to intimidate, but to document. I sat back in my chair, journal in my lap, sunglasses on, and watched her try to find the line she could no longer cross. She stayed 5 minutes, then turned and walked away. And for the first time since this began, she didn't look like a queen patrolling her kingdom. She looked like a shadow, trying not to disappear. Part 8. The meeting room, the projector screen, and the silence that followed. The agenda was printed in bold. Ongoing beach trespass. Action item number 4. They didn't name me, but I knew exactly who they meant. The flyer showed up in my mailbox like a threat dressed as an invitation. I wasn't planning to attend. Not until I read that one line. Violation of protected HOA beachfront. I stared at it for a long moment, then picked up my black folder. That night, the meeting room smelled like bad coffee and borrowed authority. Folded chairs squeaked, whispers floated like stale air. Karen was already seated at the front, clipboard resting like a throne. She hadn't noticed me yet. I took a seat, 2 rows from the front, folder in my lap, hands steady. They ran through lawn complaints, parking disputes, someone upset about tennis court repainting. Then, item 4. Karen stood, tapped the mic like she was preparing for battle. "We have a recurring issue," she began, eyes scanning the crowd. "A non-member has been occupying our private shoreline, repeatedly, despite our efforts to educate and warn." Murmurs, a few nods. One man raised his hand. "Wait, who is she talking about?" Karen's eyes locked on mine, smug, but twitching. "She's here," she said. "She can speak for herself." All eyes turned. I stood slowly, walked to the front. No fear, no fire, just the weight of facts in my hand. I rested the folder beside the projector, clicked it open. My name is Olivia Reyes. I own the Shoreline parcel being discussed. It has never been part of this HOA. Karen scoffed, sharp and loud. That's not true. That beach has been under HOA jurisdiction for years. I didn't even look at her. May I present documentation? A board member, older, calmer, nodded. I placed the deed under the projector. The screen lit up. Seal, date, signature. This is the original transfer from the Hayes estate. Lorraine Hayes never signed into HOA coverage. Her land remained independent, and I legally purchased it. Click. Next page. Plat map. Here's the county file. Parcel 23A. Mine is not within your boundary lines. Click. Here's your own HOA charter, downloaded from your public site. My lot isn't listed. Karen shifted. Then I clicked one more time. The footage. Karen, ripping down the sign, muttering, "This'll teach her." The room went still. Even the air felt heavier. I held up one final page. This is a letter from the County Land Board. It confirms my land is outside HOA authority. This complaint, this agenda item, has no legal standing. Someone whispered, "It was her land all along." Karen shot to her feet. "This is a misunderstanding. She doesn't even live inside our HOA borders." I turned. "Exactly. You kept my husband and me off that beach for years. Told us we didn't belong. Now I do. And I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here because no one else should be pushed away like that again." Silence. Then, the board member who had nodded earlier cleared his throat. "Miss Reyes, thank you. I move that we remove this item from the agenda permanently and update the records accordingly." Seconded. Karen looked around, but no one met her eyes. Part 9. The viral clip, the vanishing queen, and the piece she never saw. Coming that night. I sat in my car for a long while, engine off, folder beside me. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't angry, I was steady. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to defend who I was. When I got home, my phone buzzed. A message from someone I barely knew. Just a link. And 4 words. "You need to see this." I tapped it. And there it was, the video, posted by a neighbor who'd been filming quietly from the 3rd row. Title: HOA tries to claim woman's land. Her response leaves room. Speechless. I watched the opening seconds, my voice, my words, my documents, laid out like stepping stones of truth. And Karen, shrinking in her seat like a balloon losing air. I didn't smile. Not yet. But the corner of my mouth softened. The comments poured in. She handled that with grace. Karen got owned without Olivia even raising her voice. More power to this woman. Karen didn't show her face for days. Rumor had it she went door to door the next morning. Trying to explain, trying to rewrite what the camera had made undeniable. She said it was all taken out of context. That the meeting was a setup, that she'd been targeted, but no one was buying it. Neighbors who once smiled politely now looked away. Conversations at the dog park stopped when she passed. The control she used to have was gone, and she knew it. But me? I didn't gloat. I didn't spread the clip. I didn't say a word. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about removal. Removing fear. Removing silence. Removing the idea that you have to ask permission. Just to belong. And for the first time, the beach lot was quiet again. No flyers, no fake notices, no HOA warnings flapping in the wind, just sand, waves, and my name on the deed. I sat with my journal open, listening to the tide roll in, and for once, I wasn't waiting to be challenged. I wasn't rehearsing comebacks in my head. I wasn't hoping she wouldn't show up. I was just there, present, unbothered. Because that little sliver of shoreline, that sacred silence, was finally mine. Part 10. The bench, the pathway, and the peace that stayed. The day after Karen moved out, I brought flowers, fresh-cut wild lupine, purple and gentle, tied with twine, laid in a narrow vase, mounted beside the bench I'd installed. The plaque below it, carved by hand, simple, soft, unshakable, for Miguel. His horizon is still here. I sat for a long time that morning, one hand resting on the wooden armrest where his would have been. The waves rolled in, steady, and I let myself remember everything. Not the battle, not the signs, not even her voice, just the laughter, the sun, his words, soft and teasing. You always find your way back, Liv. And somehow, I had. Later that week, I submitted a proposal, not to the HOA, to the county, a formal request to allow limited public access, on my terms, clear signage, daylight hours, no politics, no power plays, just peace. The county approved it within 2 weeks. A gravel path was added, simple, natural, a small donation box for beach upkeep. No HOA logos, no self-declared guards. And slowly, the people came. Families with beach chairs, teenagers with frisbees. Elderly couples walking dogs on soft leashes. One man stopped beside me once, eyes watery. "I used to avoid this place," he said. "Karen once yelled at my wife for stepping too close to the tide. She passed last year. But now, it feels like we're allowed again." I didn't say much, just nodded and let the wind carry the weight of it away. That weekend I hosted something small. No announcements, no speeches, just a circle of neighbors, lemonade, pastries, stories shared like seeds in spring. Laughter returned to that stretch of sand. Not forced, not policed, just real. And Karen? She became a footnote, a warning, a name no one spoke with reverence anymore. The HOA board quietly updated their records. No apologies, just silence. And me? I kept showing up every morning, sometimes with a book, sometimes just with memories, but always with peace. And in the end, that's what I'd reclaimed. Not just property, not just legal ground, but the right to stay. Without permission, without fear, without folding. And every time the tide came in, I knew it remembered too. Because the sea doesn't care about power. It only reflects what's already true. And this time, the truth was mine.